Hey everybody, Gary with Basecamp Trading. Let's take a look at the ES again today. You can see that the ES was kind of choppy today, and people ask me, how do you identify chop? What's a way we can identify chop? Well, on a 30-minute chart, you can do it. I actually like to try and define it a little closer on smaller time frame charts, but you can do it on a 30-minute chart. What you're looking for is a significant pivot on each side. So this was our opening bar for the US session. You can see we pushed higher, and then we made this big drop. Left this big topping tail off the 50 EMA, left this big topping tail. The entire body was selling, closed right down here at the bottom, opened little topping tail and pushed way down. But then we left this big bottoming tail right here. And then we had a strong bullish bar back the other way. Opened at the bottom, closed at the top, back above the 5 and 13. Had a doji bar, pushed up to the 50 EMA and rejected. So at this point now, you have a significant pivot low. You can see we have a significant pivot low here. 2 bars on each side. We have a significant pivot low right here. And then we push up, break back above the 50 EMA, leave the big topping tail, and right back down to the 50 EMA again. And then we had a doji bar right here, and then we had a really bearish bar right here. So now at this point, you have a significant pivot high. And then you just take your channels and you put your channels in. You have a significant pivot high, significant pivot low, and now you're just pivoting inside that zone. Now that's a wide range zone, and we ended up actually pivoting inside it the entire rest of the day. You can sometimes refine these a little more. This really wasn't able to be refined much more than what we had, because we did come down here and make a pivot here. We had 2 bars on each side above the low, but then we never really made another good pivot. So you can't really say that at this point, you can't really say you're pivoting between here and here, because you're not really pivoting. You are chopping sideways with a slight upward bias, but you're not really pivoting. So your chop zone really is this significant pivot high and this significant pivot low. Now that's a huge zone. It's kind of hard to trade that because you get a lot of movement inside that zone. So we look to, unless this tightens down, now sometimes these will get real tight and you can draw in tighter compression zones. This day was just an oddball day. The 50 EMA was in play the whole day, but big moves off of it. I mean, we had, and it all started right here. We pushed up to the 50, rejected, closed in a doji, opened right here, made a bullish move higher, left the topping tail right back down to the 50 EMA, opened right here, pushed in both directions, closed right back on the 50 EMA again, opened here, left this topping tail, and a pretty bearish bar to the downside. This bar closed all the way down here. This bar opened, pushed down, just to come all the way back up to the 50 EMA again. I mean, that's a pretty significant move away from the 50 EMA just to come back to it again. This next bar opened right here, pushed back above it, and then another bearish bar off the 50 EMA. It looks like maybe ES going to start a downtrend again. Leaves a little bottoming tail. The next bar opens, and then right back to the 50, back above it, ends up closing underneath it again. This bar opens here, pushes down, comes back up, and actually closes above the 50 EMA this time. This bar opens, little topping tail, and then right back to the 50 EMA again. Leave a little bottoming tail, ended up closing right close to the 50 EMA. So today you can see price just chopped in some pretty decent swings on each side of it, but kept holding the 50 EMA. This was an important moving average for the day today. And the 50 and the 200 often are. We know that these moving averages on the 30-minute chart are often significant support and resistance and are often sticking areas. Price, whatever reason, kind of hangs out at those moving averages. Now you can shorten this down and make your chop zone smaller. Here's a good example on the ES today, and we actually had a nice trade in the afternoon session here. And you can do it pretty much the same way. You can see we have a significant pivot high here because we push all the way down, make a nice push to the downside, and then this becomes a significant pivot low. You can see that we started moving higher. So now you can bring your channels in right here. We know this is a significant pivot high. We know this is a significant pivot low. And at this point right here, we have a pivot, another pivot. And so we know at this point, when we're right here with price, we know that we're chopping between this significant pivot high and this significant pivot low. And you can see we kind of swung up, and then we swung back down, and then our pivots got tighter. So at this point now, we can refine our channel on our shorter term time frame chart. You can see that now we have a significant pivot high right here, and we have a significant pivot low right here, just on a short term. This is more of a short term pivot, but you can see we pivoted, and then once we made that pivot right here, that's when we can draw our channel, because we have a pivot, another pivot. So now we know we're pivoting between this high and this low. So we put our channels in, and we're looking for the breakout. And you can see we pivoted up, pivoted down, pivoted up, and then we pivoted lower and broke out of the short-term channel to the downside right there. We had a little down, up, down pattern right there, but that's not as big a deal. But we broke out of this short-term channel, and we pushed lower. And we can take this trade because we're in compression, and we were in compression for pretty close to an hour inside that compression zone. So now we've been in compression for about an hour. We break out, and we know that there's a high possibility that we may find support at this previous pivot low, because we know this was a significant pivot low. We made a pretty strong move to the upside off of this low. So we know this is a significant pivot low as well. However, we know on the channel break, we have room, even if we do end up finding support here and bouncing back again, we know we can at least get one target off. So it's worth taking the trade because, we can feel pretty good. We're breaking out of compression, and even if we end up bouncing here, we're going to hit first target. And you can see this did come into play right here. Now, ultimately, as you can see, we did break lower, but you can see we hit this level, and see that wick right there? I mean, we bounced back pretty decent off of this level, then left the topping tail, and then ended up closing down below. And then this bar, you can see little wick right there, we pulled back into this moving average again. And then that bar closed down and pushed down. And you can see one more time we made a last kiss right here. See that wick? Price got all the way down here and still came back and tested that breakout line one more time. And then the ES continued to head on lower, and we ended up with a really nice trade to the downside off of that. So ended up taking profits down here. You can see we were making bullish divergence. We'd had a nice run down. This was over, at this point, this was over $900 per contract on our initial breakout. We got the reversal bar on the bullish divergence. That's a good place to exit. And so went ahead and took profits right in here. But a nice push down on the breakout. But the Renko charts make it really easy to recognize your chop zones because, again, you can see we're just pivoting inside there. And then we're looking for a breakout. Of course, we're looking to confirm it. We want to confirm it with momentum, and ideally, we even confirm it with our higher time frame chart. So those are a couple ways to identify chop. You can identify it on the higher time frame charts. It just takes longer. The smaller bar Renko charts will make it a little easier to identify, and often we'll find a smaller compression channel that you can take advantage of the breakout on. So anyhow, a couple good ways to identify chop.